Welcome to the ninth episode of the Hungarian History Podcast, the only English voice exploring Hungarian history on social media. I am Santai Gábor, and I am glad to have you with me again. Last time we covered the Battle of Mohács. Today we turn to its most haunting consequence, the death of King Lajos. Even centuries later, Mohács still stirs strong emotions and dark suspicions. I know I promised you a guest this time, in true Scheherazade fashion, but it seems you will have to make do with just me today. Let's begin not with the facts, but with a legend. According to the 16th century French writer Martin Fumier, a phantom appeared in the Buddha palace before the battle, seeking an audience with the king. Lajos, cautious, sent a stand-in, dressed in royal robes. The phantom, not deceived, issued a chilling warning. Because you refuse to hear me, your end is near. So, if we don't believe in time travelers or ghosts, we can set this tale aside. But what follows are facts, and facts that raise even darker questions. If the murder of Lajos was intended, and it was indeed a conspiracy, then it is the most successful state assassination in Hungarian history to date. Now let's ask the question, who had a reason to spread or believe that King Lajos was murdered? The most devastating consequence of Mohács was the king's death. It created a power vacuum, and Hungary was soon torn in two. One half followed Habsburg Ferdinand, the other Szapolyai János, and both had reasons to benefit from the king's early death. Rumors, distortions, and outright lies began circulating almost immediately. At its core, the question is simple. Was King Lajos murdered by his own people while fleeing? Or did he truly drown in the flooded Cele stream? But before we go deeper, let's clear one thing. Was Lajos a coward? No, he wasn't. Tomori, his general, warned him clearly in Buda. The army could hold the Turks for no more than 2 hours. Still, the 20-year-old king rode out, knowing he might die. He wasn't running away, he was choosing to stand. Even Queen Mary, his Habsburg wife, knew the risk, yet she opposed any negotiations with the Turks. Dynastic loyalty came before love. Remember, the French and the Poles had no problem making peace with Suleiman. Before the battle, King Lajos answered those who accused him of doing nothing, saying, "Tomorrow, with the help of Almighty God, I will go with you in person, where others are reluctant to go without me." This was not the voice of a coward. He knew what awaited him, and still he chose to lead from the front. Let's take a look at the official version of the king's death. After the Christian defeat at Mohács, Lajos fled the battlefield with a handful of men, pursued by Turkish cavalry. Instead of heading northwest along the Danube, he turned east, across the marshy island near Mohács, and tried to cross a narrow branch of the river. According to the story, the king made it to the far bank, but got trapped in a muddy hollow. His panicked horse threw him off. He drowned, weighed down by armor. His companion, Acél István, tried to save him and drowned too. Only one man made it out, the royal chamberlain Ulrich Zetterich, who watched them die. 6 weeks later, Zetterich led the search party to the site. The body was found and buried. Some said it was only recognized by the king's teeth. Others said his corpse was fresh like the body of a martyr. And then the chamberlain, the only witness, returned to Queen Mary. Shortly afterward, she had him killed with an evil death, so he would never speak of what he saw again. What do the Ottoman sources say? Let's start with Kemal Pashazadeh, a respected Ottoman scholar and Sheikhul Islam at the time. Though he didn't take part in the battle himself, he compiled eyewitness accounts and used Sultan Sulayman's own diary to write his Muhachnameh. He claimed that King Lajos was wounded, and his description of the king's death is both poetic and brutal. He says, "The fire of shame burning his wretched soul, he jumped into the water with his horse and armor, and multiplied the number of those who fell and drowned." He didn't stop there. About Tomori Pál, the archbishop and military leader of the Hungarian army, Kemal Pasha wrote with withering contempt, like this: "The stupid head of the said arrogant prince is already empty of the thought and desire of winning the royal crown. It is full of grass. On the battlefield it rolled down like a ball, and its locks of hair became the ornament of the spear." Kemal's version paints a picture of disgrace, shame, and divine punishment. It also introduces a key element: the king may have already been injured before he drowned, the detail echoed in other sources. And what did Sultan Suleiman himself record? In his campaign diary from 1526, the Sultan described the clash at Moaj with disdain, like this: "The evil-hearted king and his other wretched soldiers rushed upon the serene monarch and the Anatolian army." There is no mention of the king's death, only that Tomori's fate was certain. The heads of the priests and several of the nobles were brought to the divan. On 7 September, in a letter to his governors across the empire, Suleiman still had no confirmation, saying, "The wicked king followed this principle. The victor, who saves his head, will immediately flee the battlefield. The Moslem warriors chase the evil army, put most of them to the sword, and draw the rest into the Danube, drowning them like Pharaoh's people. It is not known about the king himself whether he is dead or alive." Even weeks later, in the official Buda Fetnameh, dated 23 September, the report states the next: "The heads of the priests and nobles were cut off, but the king, once he had fallen into the net of defeat, escaped under the cover of darkness." So the Ottomans knew exactly who died: Tomori, the nobles, but not the king. One more Ottoman voice adds detail and drama. The chronicler Ferdi, writing during Suleiman's reign, left us this vivid account, like this: "The unfortunate king, after being severely wounded in 2 places, ran all night, wounded and weak, with what little strength he had left. When he reached the river called the Sharvis, unable to help himself, he plunged into the water on horseback, armed, and thus joined the group that had been drowned." It is striking how many Ottoman sources, at least 3, insist that King Lajos was wounded while fleeing. That single detail may have fueled all the later rumors of betrayal and murder. We also know that Suleiman ordered a search for the king's body, and nothing was found, at least not by the Turks. Interestingly, even Hungarian accounts differ. In a letter dated 29 September, Treasurer Turzo Elek, a man connected to the Fuggers, wrote to King Sigismund of Poland. He claimed that Lajos escaped the battle unhurt, but that his horse was injured. While trying to leap over a branch of the Danube, the horse fell, and the king drowned with it. And then, of course, came the rumors, all kinds. One of the best informed observers was Marino Sanudo, a Venetian consular who followed the Turkish campaign closely. He gathered 20 different accounts of the Battle of Mohács, some from sources tied to Szapolyai's circle. Among them was a Venetian spy's report, claiming that King Lajos had not drowned by accident, but had been killed by his own men. The most detailed first-hand chronicle of Mohács comes from Brodarics István, bishop, royal councillor, and an actual eyewitness of the battle on the field. Published in Krakow in 1527, his book was written at the request of King Sigismund I of Poland, the uncle of Lajos, who wanted a precise account to have and perhaps a guide to Hungary's post-battle chaos. Why? Because a rival narrative was already spreading, penned by Johannes Cuspinianus, a Habsburg diplomat serving Queen Mary. Cuspinianus claimed the next. The king, ill-guarded by his own disbanded army, leapt into a lake formed by the swollen Danube. None relieved the saintly king of his armor. He sank, and the water swallowed him. In October his body was found and buried at Székesfehérvár. Brodarics opened his rebuttal bluntly, like this. Some report the events otherwise than they happened, and others never cease to blame our own people, deceitfully shifting the disaster from the fortunes of war to Hungarian treachery. Let's look at the politics after 1526. Two kings, one throne. The battle didn't just kill a king, it split the realm in two. Habsburg Ferdinand invoked the 1515 marriage treaty. By dynastic law, he was the lawful heir of Lajos. Szapolyai János, voivode of Transylvania, cited the 1505 edict of Rákos Diet, which said that only a national native Hungarian king could be elected. The estates backed him. From Vienna's viewpoint, Szapolyai wasn't merely illegal, he was dangerous. So Habsburg propaganda pushed a simple, devastating line. Szapolyai plotted the king's murder, and his brother carried it out. In the 16th century public sphere, accusing a rival of regicide, or kingslaying, was the nuclear option. It framed Ferdinand as the rightful, pious savior of Hungary, and cast Szapolyai as a traitor who spilled royal blood. That narrative would shape European opinion and Hungarian politics for decades. We are aware that the wife of King Lajos was Queen Mary of Austria, sister of Habsburg Ferdinand. Their elder brother, Charles, had recently become Holy Roman Emperor thanks to the massive loan from the Fugger banking house. And the Fuggers? They made their fortune off Hungarian copper, silver and gold mines by intermarrying the Turzo family. But they had a problem. King Lajos wanted them out. He called them parasites. He blocked their influence. And worst of all, he sought loans elsewhere to finance Hungary's defenses. But the Fuggers sabotaged his efforts successfully. Had Lajos died, Ferdinand would inherit the throne and the mines, and the Fuggers would get their payment back. Did Queen Mary love her husband? Perhaps. But love meant little when dynastic survival was on the line. And if she did love him, why did she spend the kingdom's money so freely, knowing the danger ahead? Broderick in his chronicle first noted the origins of what later became legend. Before the battle, there was fierce debate over the king's deployment. Some argued he should remain at a safe distance with a select guard, but this clashed with military tradition, which expected the king's presence in the battle. There was even a romantic notion of disguising another man in royal armor, though it was dismissed. Facing uncertain odds, the council decided the king must be guarded separately. If the battle turned hopeless, they were to separate him away from the fray. This plan likely fueled the later myths that Hungarians either abandoned their king or killed him outright. Three men, Ráskai Gáspár, Török Bálint, and Kállai János, were tasked with the king's protection, each given swift horses for escape. Broderick recorded another critical moment before the final assault, namely that Tomori ordered Ráskai's forces to probe the Ottoman advance and, if possible, push them back. Though Ráskai's primary duty was guarding the king, he obeyed Tomori's command, with Lajos' consent, and charged toward the enemy. This decision may have later been twisted into the claim that the king's guards abandoned him, indirectly causing his death. But Broderick clarified, saying, "There seemed no doubt he could return in time if the king needed aid." And Broderick described the chaotic aftermath of the initial successful charge like this, saying, "The king's armored column surged forward as fast as their heavy gear allowed, but then the right wing faltered. Men began to flee, likely panicked by the sudden roar of enemy cannons. The combination of their retreat and the relentless hail of cannonballs now whistling past us, those of us standing near the king, filled everyone with dread. Then the king vanished. Had he pressed ahead into the front lines as planned? Or had his guards, Cetri, Majlát, and Horváth, already pulled him from the fray? In that moment of terror, either was possible," he said. One thing was certain to Broderick: the king was no longer among them when the Ottoman cannons roared and the right flank collapsed into chaos. He went on, "I dare not blame those tasked with guarding him, nor those who perhaps too hastily pulled him from the battle." He recounted the tragedy's grim conclusion, like this: "Many perished in the flooded waters. Half a mile upstream from Mohács, near the village of Csele, then submerged deeper than usual by the swollen Danube, the king's body was found in a steep ravine. Some claimed he had fallen there himself, dragged down by the weight of his armor and horse, drowned alongside countless others. Nearby lay the bodies of Trepka András and Acél István." This account matched what Cetteritz later reported to Queen Mary. Let's return to her. By 1524, Mary of Habsburg had skillfully gained considerable power in Hungary. The following year, she outsmarted the so-called national faction, led by Szapolyai brothers, and solidified her political dominance. Before the battle, she had dispatched her most trusted bodyguard, Cetritz, to protect King Lajos during the looming crisis. The loyalty of the king's other guards remains uncertain, but their fates may speak volumes. In the chaotic aftermath of Mohács, Mary fled Buda for Pozsony. What is certain is that once Cetritz completed his mission, retrieving the king's body, assuming it was truly his, the queen ordered his execution. And almost immediately she summoned her brother, Ferdinand, to claim Hungary's throne. The same Ferdinand who had sent no troops to aid Lajos before the battle, yet now rushed to raise an army and seize the kingdom. The Habsburg propaganda machine sprang into action after Mohács, and its influence cannot be overstated. When it came to the death of King Lajos, the narrative was carefully crafted to fit three elements. First, Hungarians were cowards and kingslayers. Second, German mercenaries stood as Christianity's last defenders. Third, and Mary of Habsburg was a grieving widow worthy of sympathy. The world finally accepted Ceterit's official account that the king stumbled into a tributary of the Danube. As Lajos disappeared beneath the water, Acél jumped his horse after him, only to drown as well. Cetrich, the Bohemian Guard, merely watched. Then he rode straight to Pozsony, Pressburg, Bratislava, to deliver the news to the queen. Thus history was written by the victors. Yet one haunting question remains: the money. When news of Mohács reached Buda, Queen Mary wasted no time. She loaded her royal treasures onto boats, fleeing toward Pozsony. But wait, weren't we told that the crown had no funds to hire mercenaries? What treasures were suddenly worth salvaging? The answer never came. Her boats were intercepted at Esztergom. The loot seized before she reached Pozsony on September 3. Imagine the inventory: gold, jewels, the very coins that could have paid for Hungary's defense. The records are silent. One of her boats was sunk. It might be loaded with secrets on the bottom of the Danube. Let's revisit Horváth Gáspár and Majlát István, the king's guards, tasked with keeping fresh horses ready for escape and protecting his life. Both men emerged from Mohács unharmed. Horváth's wife was one of Queen Mary's closest confidants, even assisting in diplomatic missions. Yet, after the battle, Horváth fled to the camp of Szapolyai, clearly unwilling to face the queen. That is, until Szapolyai sent him back to Pozsony as an envoy with a bold proposal: marriage to Mary, to legitimize his claim to the throne. The twist? The queen briefly entertained the idea before rejecting it. Yet Horváth never returned to Szapolyai, who then stripped him of his lands for betrayal. Meanwhile, Majlát's fate was strikingly different. Rewarded with wealth and titles, he even became voivode of Transylvania by Szapolyai. So the question lingers: was his silence bought? Then there is this chilling detail. When the king's body was recovered, stripped of his armor, 3 distinct wounds were found. Contemporary accounts describe them as pierced by a weapon of German or Bohemian fashion. A round dagger, those brutal 3 or 4-edged blades designed to punch through armor. Here is what unsettles me: the Ottomans didn't use such weapons. The Habsburg propaganda machine didn't just smear Hungary, it rewrote reality. After 1526, the Hungarian betrayal became an unchallenged trope. No proof was needed. The narrative hardened into dogma. At its center stood Szapolyai János, caricatured as the arch-villain, a godless traitor of Christian blood, who allegedly summoned the Turks to destroy King Lajos. Why? Because he hated the Germanic tribes from birth and vowed to see them dead. These cliches dominated pamphlets and chronicles, meticulously crafted to poison German and European opinion. The goal: to paint Hungarians as innate turncoats, justifying Habsburg domination as a moral crusade. In addition to a letter of condolence, King Charles V also arranged a symbolic funeral for Lajos, but he didn't invite any ambassadors to attend. According to contemporary sources, Charles' joy was greater than his grief, since the emperor and his brother had won two new countries with this funeral. Szapolyai János remains one of history's great contradictions then and now. To some, he was a traitor, a puppet of the Ottomans who betrayed Christendom. To others, a national hero, Hungary's last elected king, and the architect of Transylvania's future. Indeed, his younger brother György died at Mohács. But did the Szapolyai family want the throne? A telling legend survives. When King Mátyás died in 1490 in Vienna, Szapolyai's father cradled the boy and lamented, "If you were 10 years older, I would make you a king." From that moment, János was groomed for royalty. So, did he coldly await Lajos' death? The theories clash. Some claim he deliberately held back, biding his time. Others argue he feared Suleiman's unpredictable advance. A third camp insists he was deceived. A forged royal order pinned him in Szeged. 5 centuries later, the debate still burns. The Viennese scholar Wolfgangus Lazius, a camp physician and chronicler of Austria's Hungarian campaigns, pointed a damning finger at Szapolyai. In his manuscript history, he not only accused János of orchestrating the death of King Lajos, but went further. He claimed Szapolyai György, János' own brother, drowned the king in the marshes of Mohács. Then, with a historian's caution, he retreated, saying, "We can neither confirm nor deny this." Let's turn to the most controversial chronicle of all, Szerémi György's Epistola, a text mainstream historians often dismiss, but one we cannot ignore. Born a peasant in Szerémség region in 1490, Szerémi rose to serve János Korvin, the illegitimate son of King Mátyás. By 1520, he was a priest in Buda. After Mohács, he became Szapolyai János' personal chaplain, shadowing him loyally for years. He penned his Epistola de Preditione Regni Hungarorum in Transylvania under the protection of Szapolyai's widow, Queen Isabella. His chronicle spans from 1456 to 1543, but its most explosive claim, the fate of King Lajos, was written only after Szapolyai's death in 1540. Why the delay? Fear? Loyalty? While most historians reject Szerémi's version, his account raises chilling questions. Did Szapolyai György cause the murder of Lajos? Here is what Szerémi dared to say once his king could no longer silence him. Now, readers, please pay careful attention to my statement regarding the death of King Lajos. When examining his body we discovered 3 stab wounds inflicted by a Bohemian sword. As priests, we were only permitted to privately inspect the body and were forbidden from disclosing this information due to Voivod János, later King Szapolyai. This is how the death of King Lajos occurred. After the death of King Szapolyai, we can reveal the truth. A Hungarian warrior heard of King Szapolyai János' death and exclaimed next, "Now is the time for me to reveal the truth about the death of King Lajos." And he proceeded to speak as follows: "My beloved brothers, pay heed and learn about his death from me as it had happened to him. We, Szepesi György, Szapolyai György, Tomori Pál the commander, have taken King Lajos through the swamp. He was healthy and unhurt. Cetteritz was with us too. And upon arriving at a village near the market town of Báta, Szepesi György suggested, 'Would you like to take some rest here, my lord and king? You may dismount your horse and remove your armor, while we prepare a meal for you.' The king, who had heard this proposal, welcomed it, and the commander, Tomori, agreed. When the king followed orders, Tomori Pál left with the king's permission. György stayed with the king and said, 'You king, you dancing whore, you have lost Hungary, our rights, and Prince Lőrinc's possessions. You will die.' György drew his sword and stabbed the king 3 times. The king fell to the ground, sitting in the room only in his shirt. When Tomori Pál found out that he had killed him, he immediately rushed at György and exclaimed, 'You killer rouge!' Tomori was wearing armor because he was guarding the king, so he hadn't taken it off. He had just left his quarters and gone to his servants. Pál killed György on the spot. Szepesi György had a vice lieutenant with a large group, and when he heard that his lord was killed, he immediately attacked the commander and his men, resulting in Tomori Pál's death. 3 of them were dead, the Hungarian warrior remarked, by the time it was already night time on what was Thursday. The night was incredibly dark. They rushed to bury Pál and György in a common grave at a village church. They removed the clothes of King Lajos and transported him to the lake, where they created a grave for the unfortunate king on the shore and left him on the bank of the river. It was Szerémi's so much despised version. I don't want to be smarter than Zrínyi Miklós, alias Nicholas Zrinski, who pointed out in 1652 in his work called The Valiant Lieutenant, saying that, however fable-like the circumstances of the death of Lajos, the story is nevertheless true. The reinterpretation and revision of the Mohács myth in the 20th century was initiated by the book of Nemeskürti István, titled This Happened After Mohács, in the 1960s. This unprecedented volume provoked an unparalleled debate, both in the media and academic literature, for more than a decade. It has received severe criticism and enthusiastic support at the same time from the moment of its publication. However, one thing is outstanding: the extraordinary ferocity and vehemence of how the historical profession analyzed its claims, with rare consensus and harsh criticism, while the general public, receptive to history, was able to enjoy its enormous success. The book was published 4 times. Will the debate ever end? It was the Hungarian History Podcast, the only English voice about Hungarian history on social media. Please sign up to receive the next episodes, in which we go on with the chronicle of events between Mohács and the beginning of the 15-year war. You will hear the summary of the explosive era of the Castle War period, full of heroes like Dobó István in Eger Castle, Zrínyi Miklós in Szigetvár, or Szondi György in Drégely Castle. Subscribe on Substack or follow on Patreon to receive more podcasts. For now, goodbye. Sziasztok, a viszonthallásra!